And we'll see what happens at
Probably trains right through your windows.
But it's not a freight train, you know, it's just a little.
the only concern we
Yeah, I
have.
know.
It's neat, it's sort of fun because, it's a steam engine, so it's like, wow.
He sometimes thinks that she's.
It runs train up to a vacuum.
Oh, no, to Seattle, yeah.
They don't let it go.
Seattle, only $1 houses.
Yeah.
There's a railroad track and then.
Don't let them.
At all? I figured.
The houses isn't that burden.
She does stand up.
By who's on in Larry's.
Still up at 8.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, the restaurant.
Yeah.
It's 7 o'clock.
He's on.
We are ready when you
We're gonna do the real thing.
Okay, oh, wow.
And all be together.
Put your pledge of allegiance.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, is there any topics from the floor that's not on the hearing agenda? Talk to us about. Nothing?
Think of something. Get up there.
Okay. Well, you don't have to. You don't have to. We can save a couple hours here. I mean, 5 minutes.
We have a timer now.
All right. It's 7:01. Oh, we gotta wait till 7:05?
Got some minutes.
Got some
Consent
We got
agenda.
the
Consent agenda.
minutes. I move we approve them.
Read the minutes.
We gotta be done by 7:03 with all of it.
I'll second the motion.
Good me.
Okay.
I've got a question now. I've got a question on that. We had testimony from a citizen asking about, coming to us and asking us about riverfront development, shared concerns about the funds and environmental studies and all that. And we hear them, but we never do anything. We want to meet our council member, take that to them and come back to us. I mean, we're asked questions.
Yeah, I talked to Art a little bit and he said he kind of randomly saw that the planning commission was meeting
What the hell is
when
this?
whatever was he was doing. So well, we figured he'd attend and express his concerns. They have been similar concerns he's expressed to the council directly.
Yeah.
Personally, he has.
The commission over environmental stuff.
Well, I get, when I see people in the city, they know I'm on the commission of planning. We're planning the name. People think that I know something and I really don't know anything. 'Cause I would just read the paper like anybody else. And so I just thought if there's, something that could be answered or it's, one problem with the 5 minutes is they talk to us and we never talk to them.
Sure.
So it's like, are you asking them, like, if somebody does that during 5 minutes and this and that we say that, yes, we, at the next planning commission meeting, we will have some kind of response for them?
I don't think we should necessarily do that if it has nothing to do with the planning commission.
Well,
They can say whatever they want, but it doesn't mean we have anything to do with it.
So then, just refer them to the
Yeah,
council.
I mean,
But would
maybe the council knows.
would you, as a planning commissioner, want to
It's in
know?
line with what he talked about, like, I don't know. And I guess in our name, maybe we have to change the name.
Considering.
Something. But it was a question and I don't know if we could, you know more than we know, I think.
About this particular questions that he has?
Well, you're new, so maybe you don't know all the history and that sort of thing, so that's fine, but, I don't know.
So are you asking when things like this come up, who's gonna address it, basically? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I guess when
We
people come
could-
before us,
Yeah.
they're asking questions, and do we just listen and then okay this, and then it moves on, and that person never got satisfied with what's going on? or just refer them to city council and say, you need to go to city council.
And that was, I think Chair Carey's point was that the concerns he was bringing up are within the council's purview.
Okay.
If you specifically would like to know the answer to some of his questions, you know, we can talk about that. And Counselor Berkeley could chime in with what he knows about the topic that you're bringing up. I think
It's
that's
like-
appropriate.
It's not like we're public information says, and I'll get back to you, get that information back to you.
Yeah.
It's not our role.
I think his general concern, because he called me after a council meeting, and he kind of, his general concern was he felt like sometimes he thinks city projects cruise too fast and why certain things were missed, such as the pollution along the St. Helens Industrial Business Park site, which kind of thwarted the Wilsonville Concrete Products
Yeah.
proposal.
You definitely caught on a little guffaw there that the city had done to even consider it without the cleanup vote.
Yeah.
But he was right.
Okay.
So,
Did you have a typo, Sheila, something for the minutes?
Did you have a typo?
The second.
You had a motion on the floor.
Yeah, we did.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Motion and second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There. So, what was the, I guess the bigger question is, what's the intention of the topics on the floor? Why is it in there?
Well, I mean, all boards and committees have responsibilities, and I think the general public person doesn't know exactly what each does, but let's say someone has a concern about a park. Parks, Trails, or Parks and Rec Commission, I think is what they're called, you know, would be a potential source for that. You know, in your case, let's say there was a concern about potential code, or well, you approved this and then this happened and maybe we can learn from it. There's a variety of reasons, but the fact that you're a public body, you know, someone should have an opportunity to talk to you. And maybe at the very least, they just learn about your roles through that dialogue.
So,
It's just that it's that communication thing,
yeah,
and facilitation of citizen involvement.
it's okay. I mean, I kind of like it because it does make us more approachable to the public, that we're not just a machine, you know, this planning commission stuff. I mean, I'm a state employee and people call me about all kinds of stuff, lands that are in my name. So, nothing to do with us sometimes.
And Jenny, I get calls all the time for,
Yeah.
this isn't my role, but I'll try to help you, you know.
I guess, speak to you, I'll try to make sure that they know, if I know, or you know, this is something the council could help them with, the parks or whoever.
We have pointed them in the
They
direction.
get a point in the right direction, because I gotta just shut them down. A little bad about that. Okay. All right. Hey, now it's 7:08. And planning hearing is now open. This is a quasi-judicial land use hearing. The subject of this hearing is a request for a subdivision. The subject property is identified in the county assessor's map as lot 3600 on map 4N1W 4BA. The applicant is St. Helens 2 LLC. The owner is same. Because quasi-judicial proceedings require the adherence to certain procedural formalities, we will take a few moments to cover some preliminary matters and required statements. Does any member of the commission wish to declare an ex parte contact, conflict of interest, or bias in this matter? Seeing none, does anyone in the audience object to the ability of the commissioner to make a fair decision? Seeing, what?
I'm Bob McDonald, I'm the managing member of St. Helens LLC, two LLC.
Answer is no right now.
No.
Introducing yourself, but thank you.
Close the blinds, so.
Okay.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It's up here,
too.
Yeah. And I can pull that so that it faces you.
Easier to see that.
I'm gonna do this and see if it.
Yeah, if you could, because I
That'd
can't
be
see it
good.
either, that'd be great.
Oh, that's
It's
nice.
been a while since we've needed to use
That
it.
That's
better?
fine. Oh,
Great,
yeah.
thank you. Do you still want the blinds?
No.
Okay.
I can still read this.
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Generally, the order of proceedings will be as follows. Required statements, staff report, applicant's presentation, those in favor of the application, neutral testimony, those opposed, rebuttal by applicant, final questions, close of the record, deliberations, and decision. The following statements are required to be made at the commencement of the hearing pursuant to the city code and ORS 197.7635. The following is a list of the applicable substantive criteria for the decision. City of St. Helens Municipal Code 17.136.060. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the applicable substantive criteria as described or other criteria in the plan, such as the comprehensive plan or land use regulations, such as that found in the development code, which the person believes applies to the decision. Ability to raise an issue, including constitutional or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval in this hearing in person or in writing, or failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the approving authority an opportunity to respond to the issue, precludes appeal to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, on that issue, and precludes an action for damages in circuit court. All right, staff, do you have a report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a commercial subdivision. We don't see these too often. The last one we saw was the old Violet's Villa property, which is now a bunch of apartments, Legacy Health, grocery outlet, and we anticipate being a Popeyes. And so this is another one. Not a lot of development history, but some portions of it do date back to 1891. In fact, that's when the Howard Street right-of-way came to be. So there's a little bit of 19th century in this ground. And then there was other rights-of-way through here. Those were vacated in 1944 with no easements reserved or anything like that. And then there was a lot line adjustment done in 2003. This property line here on the north side was a little straighter until that lot line adjustment, and now it's in the current configuration. And what they want to do with that current configuration is cut it up into 4 lots for commercial development. It's zoned highway commercial, and so we anticipate it being commercial. It's not really relevant to your decision, but it's just an interesting part of history. Our wetlands inventory did show a significant wetland on the site. However, that wetland was legally filled and thus removed before the city's wetland laws took effect. In fact, if you recall, in our last batch of code amendments, we had little fixes here and there, and one of them was removing this wetland from the list since we've discovered that it's long gone. Legally long gone. So no wetlands to worry about as far as your decision or the city's bureaucracy. I'm going to save utilities for last because that's the one thing that there's a little bit of debate on. It already it fronts the highway. They don't propose access from it, and there's already sidewalks along the highway, so we're not going to make them rebuild that. And in fact, the only street that will need to be built will be the portion of Howard Street that abuts the site. They have an access easement on the adjacent property on all other sides. So that makes life a little bit easier. And one of the things we talked about with the applicant and that they proposed without objection is an easement that ties all of these lots together. Since we do abut a major arterial, our code wants us to have a frontage road, which can be a shared access agreement. So that's all in there, plus the shared access from the adjoining property. Some of the easement language is a little peculiar in the shared access easement, and so we want to be sure that everybody's on the same page once this thing gets subdivided and we start getting development proposals for the lots. And so we just want confirmation that the property owner for the Columbia Commons adjacent property here consents to the access or accesses proposed. Now, we need at least one for the frontage road, although speaking with the applicant, they are tentatively looking at two. Interestingly, we don't always talk about signs so much on a vacant property, but there are a couple signs. There's the main monument sign for the Columbia Commons property here, another smaller one here related to the property, and then there's an easement for this one, and then there's an easement somewhere along here for another sign. The significance of that, businesses along the highway like to have signage. Here I am, come visit my business. But the city's rules have limitations on freestanding signs, and so because of some of these existing signs, some of these lots may not have the same sign rights because of those. I did have a conversation with the property owner yesterday about that, just so we understood it a little bit more. So that's another interesting thing about it. If we were doing this back in the early 2000s and we looked at our tree removal standards, we would have had many to preserve. However, in the early 2000s, all the significant trees were removed. That was done a long time ago, so there's nothing to preserve there. And I think it's time to talk about utilities. So this is the original utility plan that was shown. So both water and sewer are within the right-of-way to the south. This is Kelly Street and this is Howard, and they propose to extend both into the property. Now what you see here, you see a proposed easement for public water and sewer, and then you see this extension of the sewer line continuing to the northernmost part of the site. And we did receive some correspondence yesterday from the applicant expressing concerns about extending the sewer further northward due to some of the classic issues that we have in St. Helens of our rock and rock excavation costs. And so one of the well, let me back up. This is why you have this memo in front of you.
Yeah.
This is contains the correspondence from the applicant's engineer requesting that the sanitary sewer line terminate here along the southern boundary of the northernmost lot, similar to water, to reduce those costs. And I wanted you to have the applicant's request, and then just some of the city's thoughts on that. I'll show you the map that shows the applicant's request.
You can have one.
Yeah, sure, it's the last one, yeah. So you can see they've bubbled this area, and I don't believe they object to continuing the easement there, but they would like to discontinue the sanitary sewer line here. So, let's talk about that. In the staff report, it mentions one of these comprehensive plan policies, and in this memo here, we talk a little bit more of our policies, and then a standard in our engineering manual that pertains to, well, in thinking about what we were gonna do with these utilities, first of all, what's in our code? And so, one of the comprehensive plan policies talks about ensuring urban facilities, particularly water and sewer, and those are the ones we're talking about now, are properly designed to serve designated urban growth areas, and also ensure services are provided to vacant properties to meet anticipated needs. So that's one thing to think about. This other one that's sort of related in our comprehensive plan policies talks about striving to ensure that adequately sized water mains and sewer lines are installed initially to avoid costly expansion when the area becomes intensely developed. And we're not necessarily talking about utility line size. However, if you were to leave that northern portion without a utility line in it and it gets developed, when there's a need for sewer, it's just gonna be, it will be a taller order because there'll be a business there. If there's a drive-through fast food as anticipated, you know, that business is gonna have to be out of operation while, you know, the rock hammer is chipping away to get that trench in there. So that's kind of one thing to think about. You know, now's the opportune time, but there is some nervousness about cost. Now, when we look at our engineering standards manual, this is kind of a mouthful, but it does talk about services to parcels within the basin, so to speak, and that sewer lines be extended to adjacent parcels to facilitate future development. So that's kind of what we were going off when we were talking about, well, we want to try to get the sewer to the northern part of the property. Water is not such a big deal because water can be obtained from various locations. Let me explain the sewer a little bit. We didn't have a whole lot of time, so you just get one of my hand-drawn things. But here's the subject property right there. And as we mentioned in the report, you know, the sewer is going to come from the south.
It flows to the south, correct?
Yes. It flows downhill to the south.
Correct, okay.
Yes, yeah,
Fair point.
yeah, it will.
Is now.
So here's the subject property. This is Columbia Commons generally. Now, if we look at this side of the site, we do have some sewer infrastructure on the other side of the railroad here by 14th. In fact, this facility here, more than 10 years ago, it was when I first started working for the city, roughly. They did connect to city water and sewer, but there was some conduit in the highway that was installed when the highway was widened, so they were able to use that, and those are private connections. Those were not public utility extensions. So it's really not terribly feasible from on the other side of the highway and the railroad tracks. There's nothing on this side here. There is a small portion of sanitary sewer in Commons Way here. And if you can see by the rest dashed line here, that's a potential extension of the sanitary sewer main. And that could serve a variety of properties in this area, such as some of this warehouser property here. And conceivably, these properties, and these are kind of the critical ones for the sanitary sewer extension, conceivably they could pump sewer up to wherever the main is at. But it's not ideal to do that in Pittsburgh Road. So if the sewer was extended to the northern portion of the site, or even to here, as they talk about, easement rights would need to be obtained from one or two properties in here. There's a public right-of-way right there, but it could serve our wonderful unauthorized junkyard on the corner of the lot. And actually, the applicant owns some of that property I actually talked to him about that yesterday. And then there's some assemblage of lots here amongst the Columbia Commons property. They're separate lots, but they're on a private sewer system. And I know in speaking with our engineering department, the OSU Extension Office has had some problems with that private sewer because it's a party line, and a party line you have to, deal with all the other owners, whereas a public line, you just talk to the city. Anyways, so it's really trying to provide the best option for sewer here. It would require easements and such, but that's kind of the question. If the sewer ended here, you could still conceivably maybe go around, and that would avoid some of the impacts to whatever fast food goes in there. It just seems like it would be more efficient going through there, and so that's one of the big questions for the commission, at least based on what I know so far. We still have testimony, but that's the kind of the bigger question for you on this. I think the city and applicant agree on everything else. At least the meetings have been pretty few so far. There's a variety of conditions in there. In my memo, if you are inclined to agree with the applicant on that sanitary sewer extension, we can amend that condition really easily. There are two other amendments to the conditions that I recommend, regardless of how you decide on the extension. One is under the condition that talks about wanting that sanitary sewer, that the design consider the ability to serve other properties. It's already in the code. We always like to emphasize certain things in a condition, just for clarity. And really that's what our city engineer would be looking at. And then the other one, in the utility plans, it shows some tentative lot developments. And this is a subdivision proposal. This is not a site development review or conditional use permit. And several years ago, I took a legal class, and they were all freaked out about having development plans in there. So we have a condition that just says this is a subdivision. This is not a substitute for allowing a use of land or development land that requires something else. And the other thing in this more wordy condition talks about the adjacent property. And right now there's, in the utility plans, you can kind of see it, where they have some conceptual connections with the second property. So there's one here. And what I like about this one is if you go out to the site now, there's maybe kind of a curb, but there's no parking spaces or anything like that. And this connection can probably be made without any real modification to the site. But in this schematic, they also show one here. And on the adjacent property, you do have parking spaces that would need to be displaced for your circulation area, and then maybe for vision clearance as well. And so that would take some type of modern modification to the Columbia Commons property. We just wanted to make sure there was a statement in there, because that's a different owner, and we're assuming they're going to be on board with any consent of accesses, which is a condition. But we try to avoid surprises, and we try to get them in conditions to do so. So, but it's really interesting seeing another piece of property that's been sitting around a while, like dominoes. This last 2 years, all these properties lay sleeping, and then boom, 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 and here we are once again.
Freshly mowed, I noticed all the berries were mowed down. I thought something might be happening there after all those years.
So that's, we do recommend approval with consideration of the sanitary sewer thing, and then the amended conditions as I have articulated. And that's all I have for now.
Who's gonna benefit from the sewer going all the way north?
That would be,
So he owns property, they own property
yeah, so,
adjacent?
this is property under the same ownership, so there's some benefit. Really, these assemblage of properties, our city engineer thought that the sewer would have to be 20 feet deep to serve this one. She didn't think that was practical. But this grouping in here, yes, so the core junkyard property, property owned by the applicant here, and then some of these.
That's pretty swampy behind that, the big, what was Thorson's office. The dentist's office.
Half of it is wetland.
Here?
Ducks in it.
It's an official wetland.
Yeah, those are wetlands, yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's ducks back there. There were ducks on this property we're talking about 22 years ago.
Oh, yeah. It was as deep as the wetland.
At the DMV, there were
To the right.
wild ducks out
The
there.
south side of Pittsburgh Road behind the extension office and doctor's office, or dentist's office, whatever you like to call it, there's a swamp behind there.
Another wetland. It was a compliment to the one on the south driveway.
Just wondering what could be developed there anyway, in that particular section.
Right in the right of way.
You get sewer through the wetlands.
So it really wouldn't serve that property if you have to go 20 feet deep.
No, 20 feet deep would be for this property here,
Across Pittsburgh.
and that's why I didn't
Oh,
shade it,
across,
yeah.
okay.
And and it's outside of city limits, we're talking about this core area here,
The junkyard and all that stuff?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So it's, kind of weird because it's not a street or right of way. We know there's a little bit of a void in sanitary sewer service there. And it is in the urban growth area. We like to see urban intense development. But, there's always things to think about, and what's fair, what's just. The good news about this one is a lot of the improvements that we would see with a lot of development, it's not as bad because the highway doesn't have to be reconstructed. The only street improvements are along Howard. So other than the utilities in Howard Street, there's no other public improvements.
So that no other parcel would have benefit of that sewer line?
Multiple parcels.
But he's the owner of the other parcel.
No, he is the owner of this one here.
I'm not getting the lines, okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of lines.
Oh, okay, all
Or other ones.
right, I don't have that here, so
You
that's.
can look behind you too, Russ, it might be a little clearer.
Light would.
Yeah, show him the one he owns.
Yeah, this is,
Can you see that? Yeah.
So there's 5 properties there.
Oh, right
But
through
there's-
there, okay.
But there's a wetland in that one.
So that's the extension service or whatever in there?
yeah, the extension service is right here.
Got it, okay.
And then these are some of the medical buildings.
Offices
This is Kohai.
and
Wetland
dentists.
behind us.
And these ones are served by a private party line sewer system.
And where does it go?
I believe that this line here that's marked private connects to that main here.
Okay.
So why could the private line be made public line? That's the main.
Probably because it's not designed to a public standard. I don't know much about its design type.
Under a building too, I guess.
And
It's right under DHS.
And Howard Street is the public standards and has the capacity of taking everything.
Yeah, in any discussions of this, both water and sewer from the south, from south of Howard, have all been feasible, no objections from our public works and engineering departments. So the services are there,
Oh, come on.
and I believe there's no objection to extending them to the southern boundary of that northernmost lot. And water doesn't need to extend all the way. It really is, do you go that extra mile for sewer? Now,
needs to be deep.
Or, unless there's an objection, you just get the easement there so you have another option to solve that riddle sometime in the future. And of course, I'm sure we'll have some testimony about that.
So any other questions for staff before we talk to the applicant? Go ahead, if the applicant has a presentation, you're welcome to come up at this time.
Did you put it up this one?
Yes.
Sit at the table, or you can stand up.
If I can stand, I think I could.
Wherever you would like.
We only have, there's only three things we'd like to talk about, and one is the extension of the sewer. The second is a signage issue with not being able to obtain a pole sign for the lot parcel 1 because of the monument sign that services Columbia Commons. And basically, the third is a concern that I know Jacob has with respect to visibility in the entrances. So those are really the only three issues we have. And if you extend this farther, you see one of the reasons we are bringing sewer from here to the property, which is mainly rock, which we're cutting through, and some places almost 12, 14 feet deep. And so we own, well, I'll give you background. We own the property, which was the old hospital. We remodeled the hospital, we put in the Department of Health and Human Services and leased it up and then sold it to Meriwether Properties. In that process, we ended up with this 3.31 acre properties, 10 acres on the other side, and some property out there along Kelly Street. We sold the property we sold the 10 acres, sold the Kelly Street property to a fellow by the name of Hess, who has been, I know he's been trying to develop there because of no sewer, he couldn't afford to do the sewer. And the property on the other side of Kelly Street, Birding Howard, also is vacant, and they have signs up there, but I know I'm not sure where they're getting their sewer. So basically, we're benefiting these two properties already, and the cost to get it to that site is fairly significant, but it's the only way we were able to develop this property. So we felt it would be an undue financial burden for us to have to extend that sewer all the way to the other side, and it's fairly expensive in the depth that we'd have to go to make that all happen. So that was our reasoning in saying, okay, we prefer to give you the easement, but not take on the financial burden of doing that. So that's our position with respect to the sewer. Does anybody have any questions on that? And if it's possible, I mean, we would also be interested in seeing if there's any possibility to get a latecomer agreement from these people to participate in some way in the cost of the extension of the sewer. But I'll leave that for another.
Can you move the picture, the map up? So if you were to not extend it and have an easement, would it be in that design? So in the future, if it came along and wanted to put it in, it would be a big hole.
Well, that's a problem, and I think that's the problem really for this particular for the particular owner that we'd be selling that to. That
So
parcel.
would it be better to have the easement along the edge of the property or somewhere
Well, absolutely.
less disruptive?
It would be. That would be much better if it's possible to do it that way.
Jacob, could you put the marker right on the little niche there between the top lot and the next one to it, south? Right in the corner there. What if you stopped the sewer, ran it over there, stopped the sewer right there, put a manhole in, and then when he wants to work on the other properties, he's gonna need sewer it can attach to it. Is that something if it would,
Well, I think it would work if it's not on that, well,
it would be
if
right?
it's on the edge of the property, I think in either way, it's gonna be an incredible burden. We own the property, the two properties across the road, which are adjacent to the junkyard, who's putting junk on our property, which first of all, I hadn't been here in probably 14 years, so it was kind of surprising to me when I went out there and took a look at it, how bad that was. So I talked to Jacob about that and said, you know, whatever we can do to get that off that property, I'd be happy to do it.
Have you sampled what would be parcel 1? Obviously, you've done some sampling here to know that you have to go 14 feet, but do you know in fact there's rock on what would be parcel 1?
Yes.
As you go down, well, most of this area in here was a wetland. And what we did was we enhanced the wetland elsewhere and then filled that and put in a storm detention system. And that will service these 3 lots, but not parcel 4. Parcel 4 is in the rocks, a lot of rock. But this was filled, a good portion of this was filled, but the extent over there is not.
We know that Greystone Estates had quite a bit of rock to excavate,
Yeah.
which is just next door.
So you asking me more about the sewer? I'd like to ask about the signage.
Yeah, I was just curious if there had been any core samples or whatever kind of testing you do to know that you would in fact be up against significant blasting or whatever you do to get through the rock.
Not in some portion of this, no. Some portion of it, no, but some portion of it, yes.
I'm done with that part.
So I just want to make sure you had the discussion you wanted about the other two items. You had some about the signs.
Well, the second issue, that there is a monument sign, and the city code doesn't deal with the difference between a monument sign and a pole sign. A monument sign is typically an eye height, and a pole sign is something substantially larger. The tenant that we, or user that we have for this is interested in having a pole sign, and their requirement is that they have their own pole sign, not that they share it, because Jacob and I discussed the possibility of a sharing. Now, these other 2 lots, we could require there that they have a sharing of a pole sign, but that one, that requirement is basically fairly mandatory. But I guess my concern is that really is a monument sign of, that height, and it really is a monument sign to talk about Columbia Commons as a whole. And I don't think they have any additional pole signs. There are not a lot of this other signage that really isn't on the building. So I'm wondering what we can do about that, if there's a possibility. Is it require a variance, or is the fact that this sign, which happens to be on the property that we ended up with, is for the benefit of that property, not our property, and not this parcel?
Yeah, so just so the planning commission understands, when we look at a subdivision, one of the things we're trying to do, okay, what are the requirements? Does it meet the requirements? What are we gonna make them do? That kind of thing. But the other thing is, well, what kind of weird stuff is there that we wanna remember when we're looking at future proposals? And the subdivision itself doesn't necessarily affect signage per se. But because we know there's existing sign and sign easements, and just because I like to remember things and kind of use this process to do so, we've put some things in the condition that just notes the allowance of signs. Now, in our zone code, we have pole signs, the big tall ones, and then we have monument signs and ground mounted signs, which are generally kind of lower. But those are all freestanding signs, so a sign that's not mounted to a building. And so we're talking not just about pole signs, but really the full gamut of freestanding signs. And the way our sign code is it limits those to basically 1 per lot. And if if this becomes a lot, there's an existing sign, freestanding sign, actually 2 freestanding signs. And so based on the founding rules of our code, you can't have 2. A sign adjustment allow for multiple signs?
Well, just to be clear, that's for each frontage.
No, because there's some other stuff.
Oh, okay.
You said there's two signs, I only know of the one that says Columbia Commons.
That's
What's
what
that?
Well, there's the big one in Columbia Commons, there's a smaller one that I wouldn't have even noticed if I didn't have this proposal in front of me that's here. And an interesting one is there's an entitlement to another sign on this property for Columbia Commons, but there's no sign there. So
Yeah, there's,
so then for this southern parcel, oh God, I think because there's an easement and an inherent right, if we permit a sign which may take that right away, that's a legal question. So if we got a sign permit on that property, we'd have to talk to our legal counsel to see where it goes. It really doesn't have any bearing on the course of this subdivision, but like I said, we noted it because, well, this is something we have to think about. My initial thought is probably our sign variance process.
Well, we're the ones that put it, we put in that monument sign, and the idea was to put a monument sign on here in Howard too, which we never did. And I'm sure the existing owner probably doesn't even, well, you may know about it, but he hasn't done anything with it.
So it's one of those quirky things that we just have to try to work through. But it's not something that you can really solve with this proposal specifically.
If you had it in a condition that we could vote on.
yeah.
Yes, and that's to, okay, staff, remember, this is something to worry about.
How did you have it written?
Allowance of future freestanding signs for proposed lot 1 and 4 is impacted by existing sign easements and signs. So, in the body, it kind of talks about it. In the conditions, we didn't say, well, there's no way I gotta get another sign, but it's, alerting the fact, well, okay, we have to work through this, and our sign code works.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
Are there gonna be two entrances into this?
There are two entrances.
Yeah, the concept.
One off of Wyeth and one off of Howard?
Yes.
Commerce.
Yes, if you're looking at it from the highway. So there's an access easement off of Wyeth, or what would be Wyeth, it was a public street. And then also on the backside here. The principal private connection they're talking about is here. But if someone went here, they would naturally probably want to use this driveway there.
Between, if you said Wyeth and Howard, is that wide enough for a street?
Which one?
The one that runs with Columbia River Highway?
Over here?
Just, yeah, straight between the parking spots there. To get in,
Okay, when, just,
right where the pointer is,
Where's the point?
and to the left and the right.
We did a private.
Conceivably, but it's not their property.
just, when we sold,
So that you're gonna have an easement running on the property there.
There's an easement in existence now.
Didn't it say though
Oh,
that
really?
they were wanting a lot of traffic?
Should have driven up.
Yeah, there was
Some language in there about the amount
There
of
was some-
traffic street.
There was some funky loosey-goosey language, and so
Yeah.
that's why one of the conditions, we wanna be sure that property owner is consenting to those accesses.
Right.
Because this framework, this subdivision is gonna be the framework for the development that occurs.
Right.
And we wanna, when you're creating a creature, you start with the skeleton, right?
Can we, point of order, isn't this kind of staff questions to commission rather than the applicant's presentation?
I think,
It's kinda related to
trying help the
questions.
applicant.
yeah, and I think I'd like to kind of settle it to some degree, but if, also in your package, there is easement agreement and declaration of restrictive covenants. And that is something we put in place. When we sold the property, they said, well, look, we don't want you to compete with us and put, office buildings out there and without a permission, but you can't put in a 5,000 square foot freestanding building if it's an owner use a building and they want to be there. And doesn't want to come to the building. So we made some agreements when we sold this property. And And we agreed to one access point, and that access point was right there. Now, forget this, I've already told Al that we don't want that there. We want that access directly across from there. This is 24 foot wide. This this entrance would be 24 feet. And this is 20-some feet going through here. Now, what we've asked the existing owner and do not have permission yet to get is an access point right here into parcel 3.
Bob, is that on this plan, is that shown right here?
No,
Oh, it's.
no, this is the access point we have, and that dumpster was there. And this was just an initial site planning for purposes.
Sure.
Right, right.
Hold into it.
But that is where it was going to be, so it wouldn't impact any parking there and shouldn't impact any of this parking stalls there. And this is 24 feet wide there. This, we assume people might come through Howard over here, but this would be the entrance that we're looking for into there. These again are just, we don't have any tenant for that. Al drew that up and I said, well, I don't know what, don't worry about it. But this is where the entrance that we're asking Meriwether to give us, and I don't know whether we'll get it or not. So we don't, and there is no parking here. There are shrubs over here, some of them, and that's about it. So, I'm not sure I see really the issue, and we
I
have.
didn't mean it as an issue, I was.
Oh, no, I'm talking about from Jacob's perspective, because I think that one wouldn't, I don't see a visibility issue.
Yeah, this one's really clean. Here you're displacing some parking, and here you're displacing some landscape. The point is, we would need to consider the impacts of that property wherever the access is.
I understand.
That.
So we've talked about the signing, talked about the sewer. You had a third item, make sure that.
That's it?
It was the access.
Oh, the access,
portion.
okay, that's the third item. Just make sure that you.
Yeah, I mean, we do have an easement for that location right there. We don't have any easement here. Well, we have easements to cross the property, but we don't have another access point. That was in the agreement. And I don't mind, getting an agreement from them, is that access point fine, because that's what we've all agreed to.
Any other questions of the applicant?
So, of those 4 sites, everything's gonna come in and out of that one access point?
Yeah, that's what.
No, there's another, this access point, there's an access point right here that we've all agreed to, right there. And so this point and that point.
Possibly a third.
This, we've got a purchase sale agreement for this. We have a purchase sale agreement for that, and for this. And the owner of this is talking about this for his particular office building, which would be an owner user. And so that would be where we stand right now.
So you're not proposing an entrance from Commerce or Wyeth or
No,
from the north at all?
no.
Okay.
The Howard Street would be where your access was?
Yes, Howard Street here, that entrance over there.
Will you be required to do a traffic impact analysis when you get the plan?
Yes, for site plan review, Jacob is
That's when
requiring.
it comes into effect?
Yeah, not related to the it's just like
Yeah.
No, this is
Braden one.
I realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah, we didn't, because the subdivision, it's really hard to,
Oh, no.
it could be very little trips, or it could be a huge amount, depending on how each lot is used.
Sure. So I've got a dumb question, I'm not a developer, so. So if I was driving along this highway and I go, oh, there's Burger King in the corner, whatever it is, they gotta pull in that Commerce, and how do we get into this place? So, the top, the northern lot, whatever that is.
Oh, well, that's one of the reasons why we need a pole sign there.
But how are they gonna get there? They're gonna go wander around all the parking lots trying to find an entrance. It seems like.
This is pretty visible from there. You'll be able to see this property pretty well, and
But intuitively, where would you go to drive in? I think you want to drive in as quick as you could.
You're gonna drive in right here, you'll see the building and you'll come around.
Was there an entrance there? Because I didn't think
Yeah.
there was one
This
there.
is-
This
Yeah.
is the main
This
entrance.
is the main entrance.
But you're going around the lot to the back.
And this is the monument sign I'm
Yeah, I
talking
got
about.
that, but the main entrance to your lot in the corner is around the corner.
It is, except this is highly visible from, pretty much at grade out here to see it. And so you'll be able to see it, even though this monument sign is in the way.
Well, I know you see the building. You go, I want to get there, but how do I get there? It's really, that's right there. How
It's
do I
a
do that?
driveway, yeah.
So you're driving in Commerce, and then, how do you know where to go?
Think about Burger King and going into Fred Meyer's.
Yeah,
Look for the smoke.
yeah, but that's a big parking lot, that's easy.
Well,
It's pretty big, I mean, it's, you know what the width of that is, Al, this?
I don't know, that's a big driveway, because it's got the island in the middle, and it's got 2 drive lanes on both sides, I think.
Okay, I mean, I know it's a
Well, no,
big
we've only
driveway.
got one on either side of that divider.
You get the trees planted and stuff, it just seems like the driveway's gonna be hidden.
So Chair Carey, are you worried about not being able to get your Whopper?
I'm a vegetarian, I can care less about going, but someone else might.
Impossible burger, pretty good.
Interestingly enough, that's the first lot that we had an interest on, so it's amazing.
We
Yeah,
have a Panda Express.
well, anyway,
You know, it makes me think of.
people will get there, if they wanna get there.
The Costco off of Cornell or wherever it is, where that McDonald's is, this reminds me a lot of that, where you just know that you have to drive around and go.
We'll figure it out,
It
but.
also reminds me of US Bank, McDonald's, Taco Bell right down here. If you visit any one of those, you've got to go on the backside and wait for that traffic at noon, and there's a lot of traffic there.
So I just asked them, why is it in the corner, like in the northwest corner?
That's a traffic lane. Think about that.
You go around there, you go around the island and just go right in?
They're bringing it farther down, but
Yeah.
if you exit right there at the corner.
I'm not trying to design for you, it's your problem.
Well, I mean,
I was asking.
you can't get access off here, so we have to use these 2 entry points.
It also has to do with the way drive-up restaurants work, traffic,
Oh.
and how to get your stacking lane and all that.
Circle around so they're not crossing each other.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you. Didn't understand it.
That's my arrows.
So that's your.
Yeah.
Okay, in favor?
Sign.
If anybody has any testimony in favor?
Well, I have a few items that I wanted to raise. And I'm gonna kind of back up a little bit. I remember when I was on the planning commission and there was a kind of blanket amendment made to the zoning code. And I had my concerns about it at the time, but I couldn't define them very well. And so this afternoon, before I walked down here, I looked up that provision that was added and expressed my concerns. So I went through, I just picked out the apartment residential zone, just because. And the specific sentence that was added at that time says, basically, all chapters of the development code apply. So basically, when somebody comes in, you're throwing the book at them. Essentially is what you're doing. And when that sentence was added, in each chapter, there was a whole bunch of sentences that said which part of the development code applied. So maybe under apartment residential, it said wetlands applies, streets and whatever applies, and it had a whole laundry list of things that applied, but not every single item was listed. And it seemed expedient at the time to add that because practically every single thing was listed. Okay, well, I went through the subdivision ordinance that line is not in the subdivision ordinance. Okay, so the applicable criteria for a subdivision is listed in the subdivision ordinance, and that's it. So, we've been discussing about signs. It's not in the subdivision ordinance about signs. And the subdivision ordinance does not throw the book at you. So, the discussion about signs is preliminary, it's speculative, and it doesn't apply to the subdivision ordinance. So, it's my opinion that this condition, which is supposedly to be written onto the final plat, is irrelevant because it's not in the subdivision ordinance. So, and you know, my education, everybody knows my mom's a lawyer, and she has given me lectures occasionally on the law. And sometimes the lecture has to do with a strict reading of how the law is written. And when you have somebody who's a strict reader of how the law is written, the rule is basically you read what it actually says in the specific law that you're dealing with. And if that specific law that you're dealing with does not actually say this other stuff, then you don't consider it, because it doesn't say it. So that's when you have someone who's a strict legal interpreter of the law. The subdivision ordinance doesn't say anything about signs. So, in my view, you can't put a condition on a subdivision relating to signs because you don't legally have a right to do so. That's my opinion. I'm not a lawyer, but that's my reading. And so my opinion is that condition should be taken off, and a surveyor, a good surveyor, does a title search, and then when that surveyor does his survey, he's required to show on the plat all easements that affect the property. But a surveyor is not required to put on the plat where's the condition?
Condition 6, page 12.
Allowance for future standing signs where blah, blah, blah is impacted by existing sign easements and signs. That is not a reference to an easement. That is somebody saying, oh, hey, you might be affected by this. A surveyor, that is not language that you normally see on surveys, and such a condition should not be a condition of this preliminary plat application. So that's my opinion on that. The same goes for number 5. It's a convoluted language that talks about the uses. If anybody does their research, they will see on the plat or on the survey a reference to an easement, and they'll see in a title report a reference to an easement, and if they're doing their due diligence, they'll get a copy of whatever that is. So having some superfluous language on the plat because some planner has a concern about what might happen in the future is irrelevant. Now, the issue about the storm, since this is up here, we've talked about various possibilities of, how access can be obtained, et cetera, and and Mr. McDonald is working through those issues with the neighboring property owner. But that is for when site development review occurs. And when site development review occurs, all of those questions are all gonna be looked at again and dealt with, and the city engineering staff will be involved at that point. They've been involved a little bit already, but they'll be involved at that point, double checking, making sure that the driveways are wide enough, making sure that the access aisles are wide enough. Jacob will be counting parking spaces to make sure there's enough parking spaces, and counting bicycle spaces to make sure there's enough bicycle spaces. All of that discussion is for site development review.
Right.
So, you know, it's nice to talk about for this, and there are some issues with it, and it's good information, but all of that is really for site development review. Now, the issue about the easement, or the adding the sewer line going north, is a little bit of speculation as well. It's my opinion that it's rather impractical. Everybody on this commission knows that there's basically a pretty good sized pond behind all those properties. And in fact, it extends all the way out here to the upper level of whatever that street is, Wyeth Street, or, Columbia Commons Drive. It's just on the other side of that. So if this sewer line was extended, it'd have to go through a wetlands to get to whatever properties are supposedly to be served. So more than likely, when you put in a sewer line, you want it to be level. So you'd have to fill a portion of that wetlands so that the pipe could sit on solid ground. Because nobody knows how deep that wetlands is, at least I don't. But it's been there a while, and by the time this sewer line gets up there, if you put it to the northern end and say, oh, we're gonna extend the sewer line, well, frankly, I don't think it's practical. So those are kind of my basic comments related to those two specific things. Now, the other one, again, well, I already mentioned the sign, so that's really the only comments I have about those conditions. Now, I know the other condition. This condition that is proposed, this last condition, there's two conditions here. One, design shall consider the ability of properties to the north of the subject property. Okay, as a subdivision, this is again future. This is about engineering and about the design of the utility. This isn't about property lines. I mean, what is a subdivision? A subdivision is considering where property lines are and how many parcels you are having. And in this case, where we think the sewer will probably go. Well, that's true. Well, again, this particular condition is a condition that has nothing to do with property lines. And frankly, the next condition, I'm not sure what it means. I mean, it's just this broad general statement. That's the one on the back of this page, right here. On the back. Did you guys see that? Yeah. He's proposing this other condition, which is a long, convoluted sentence, and I'm not sure what it really means. And frankly, it basically is repeating, our comprehensive plan and our development code and all that stuff. Is just trying to condense it and put it into one sentence. And basically, yeah, we know we have to, a condition. You have to go, you have a piece of property, you want to develop it, you have to go through site design review. Everybody knows that's the law. Why are we throwing a condition on which everybody knows is the law?
If I can say one thing in defense of Jacob, one thing I would like to say is we are meeting with these particular users, and I don't like surprises down the road, and I appreciate the fact that he's brought some of these issues up, whether they are pertinent to this subdivision, I don't know, but issues with that he described about the visibility, I'm glad he brought that up, I'm glad he brought up the signage, which we would probably never have known until we got pretty far along in our process. And it may not, I don't know, may have escaped, well, maybe not, because it would have, in the site plan review process, they would have to show that sign. But I don't think anybody knew about that until you just brought it up. So even though it may not be pertinent, I'm happy with that you brought that up.
And this is actually time for you. Do you have anything else you want to counter or
No,
add to testimony? Okay. Thank you. No one else here? We don't have any opposed. No other final questions?
Reading my mind.
Any other final questions of the commission to the staff or the applicant? Before we close the record. Hearing no further questions from the commission and no further responses from staff, the public record is closed. This matter is returned to the table for deliberations and oral discussion.
Al brought up something. When I was reading this today, when I started, I thought we were just doing a property division, and all the rest of this would be as each property was developed. And so to me, it was confusing. In other words, aren't we just drawing 4 lines?
And well, it's the framework lines, yes. In a residential
And
subdivision.
I understand that, and the rest of this is aid in getting the lots individually sold.
Yeah, it's access, lots, and utilities.
You can't just cut it up and cut off one of those lots to one of those things. It has to be thought about more than just breaking up lots. It's kind of like if you've got a property, it's got one half the property's all solid wetlands, the other property is not.
I understand that.
And you break it up and now this guy's got all the wetlands.
Well, no, I understand that, but for him to sell it, it's not our problem whether it has a sewer line. It's our problem when he brings it back to us with what he's gonna put on it.
Our problem is to make sure each lot has access to urban services so it can be a functional lot.
Okay.
And that's where the framework of your property lines, your access, your utilities all comes into play.
There's some minimal amount of stuff it has to be able to connect to. And Al's bringing up the extra things that are maybe not the minimum things that need to be in place.
No, I understand, but basically, you've got the sewer, utilities, and 4 lines,
Utilities,
3 lines to divide.
And
also
access.
access.
Yeah, no.
Sewers, utilities like power and sewer, those things.
Well, he could have 4 lots without any of that on it, and then it's his problem. You can have a teepee and a blue house out back. Little blue house.
Now, as far as the conditions, and this is the way I've done it for a long time because things get very busy and, and then projects get delayed. And so you have to remember what were all the details. And we use these reports as a tool to remember that. So taking the signs and the covenant out of the conditions, I don't have a problem with that, but it should be a footnote. Because this report's a tool for us to take it out of the conditions, no problem, footnote at the end.
Yeah,
I agree with
okay,
that.
let's do it that way.
Makes sense to me.
That way it's, well, here's some issues,
Clean.
we're not imposing a condition, so to speak,
Yeah,
but the FYI is there.
Public service.
yeah.
It would it would be not serviceable to not have any mention of it. And he's surprised later on.
Yeah, it's just, and we, that nobody likes surprises in the development biz.
And there's stuff you haven't even talked about that they still have to develop, but these are kind of odd ones.
And then the reason for the so to speak convoluted condition is, when you go to land use legal seminars, and they talk about cases where someone had a proposed development and they said, well, this was on a plan, thus you approved it. I'm gonna put a condition in there to make sure, and I don't think that's the intent at all from the applicant. But my job is to be cautious. So that's why that last condition is in there. It doesn't change, it just says, you need a site development review to develop these.
Is it instead of, it's kind of a backwards way of saying it, could you simply say that what you see on these plans don't necessarily apply to the subdivision? In other words, these are just for instances of how it would be developed. But you have to be, I understand that. I mean, in my world, if someone maps a wetland and they've got it on a map, and then it never was concurred with by the agency, people think that was a real wetland boundary, and it wasn't. So you have to be really careful not to have a fake map that doesn't mean anything, because it then becomes the thing in the future. So you want to make sure you don't have it be the thing. No, you said you're going to develop it this way, the building's like that.
Well, that is not the plat.
Yeah.
That's just a conceptual layout. We have in the application a plat,
Yeah,
a proposed plat.
just the 4 lines
Yes.
with the, okay.
Yeah, I asked civil engineer, I don't know why he sent that with those plans on there, but he did.
So what are you saying then? Is that what you're saying? That this conceptual plan is not real? Is that what your condition's saying?
Yes.
Which page is just the plat?
Actually, we had a pre-application meeting, and we had all of the respective users on that pre-application meeting. And we said, okay, well, let's at least take a look at the site plans first so we could get some ideas of what you're up against. And that's when those plans were from that, and then we got guidance from the city. And we know that there are modifications that need to be made to make it work.
Yeah, and that was valuable to give them some input. Well, once we get past the subdivision, here's how we go through it. It's a condition that's not gonna harm anything. It's just a backup condition. Let's say they sell the property to the devil. And then the devil tries all the tricks in the book. We need those tools to deal with those tricks.
I don't have a problem with that, condition number 9. I disagree. I don't think everybody knows that we need a site development review. We're not developers. I mean, all of us seem to have some experience with it, but I don't. And so that if it's possible, they could sell it to somebody that doesn't know the process. So I think that's really helpful, but I don't have a problem with condition number 9. I'm still not sure what page just the plat is on.
Well, this is on the screen.
Okay.
It's in your packets. It's one of the original attachments.
Okay.
But basically, that's the preliminary plat there.
The utility plan says.
Well, that's the utility
So you
plan. No, the
know
plat
that
is
there's one
simpler.
to the left of it, when you get to the
Sorry.
utility plat.
There's the plat.
Yeah, that's the one.
But the utility plan is a component because those easements would be established
Right.
as part of the subdivision.
You've got them across from each other, so they're.
I think it is our obligation to know that when we're creating a new subdivision, that we have access and we have proper utilities. It makes no sense to create one that is useless.
Right.
And that we're not putting any undue burden on adjacent property owners or on the applicant.
That's a good question. Is it my understanding that the final plat can't be approved until those utilities are in place?
That's correct. So, and this is pretty loose because technically the public record's closed, but
Oh, yeah.
we don't have a lot of people with torches and pitchforks, so,
Back to the devil, huh?
yeah. Well, it is gonna be hot week, so.
You should have been jealous here.
So one of the big questions is that sewer. If you want to terminate it,
Well,
at least the physical improvements, just terminate it at this point as requested, or ask for it to go to the northern. You know, it's not the end of the world here.
Yeah, well, that site doesn't need sewer to run across it.
It does not.
You go to the corner and it's good. So it's like that expense, and I've been in the business a little bit, so that's a tough one to swallow, especially when you're going halfway to Scappoose with a sewer line. That's a long way. So I appreciate what he's doing there to get it, and he has to,
Yeah,
but just to run it for no reason at all to the northern part.
I wouldn't go
That's
to
why I
the
sort of
northern.
brought up, could the easement be off to the side in a manhole there that would be right on the property line there at the corner?
Yeah, I mean, there's the potential for it to extend to the northwest. You know, how exactly, we know they would need easements to the Columbia Commons property.
Yeah.
And we know it would probably need to be further away from the highway because of some low points. In fact, talking with their city engineer, you know, the assumption is, you know, it may need to clip. Going north, it probably would need to clip the southern side of that extension off his property.
But his property in the junkyard would flow to Pittsburgh? Could flow to Pittsburgh, is that right?
Potentially, yeah, let me,
that'd be
I
pumped.
like the manhole suggestion. Let him
It's gonna
stop.
be a metal one.
yeah, so conceivably, if the sewer line, which in Columbia and Commons Drive, which ends here, there's a manhole right there, if it was extended to Pittsburgh, conceivably, these people could pump up to that point. It's just, you know, you're in the right of way having to deal with that, but conceivably it's possible.
So that property is zoned highway commercial also, to the corner of Pittsburgh?
Yes, uh-huh.
Up, I think it's
And that's a lot of lots right there, so that sewer would be
Yes.
justifiable to put
down.
So it's one of those trying to make your best guess situations,
Yeah.
in a little more unusual situation too.
What are the other, OHSU or whatever,
Yeah, that's the extension office.
What about the other three above that?
And then there's a couple of medical offices,
Right,
and then this is where Kohai is at, and a dentist and stuff.
And a dentist and
used to be,
awesome.
Columbia.
Lower Columbia used to be there.
And they're on sewer?
I think they're on this private party line. All these are on that private
They're all
party
going
line.
that way across, okay.
And all of them had an opportunity to submit testimony if they were opposed to. I'm okay with stopping the
Yeah,
But
line preemptive.
it should have I should have an easement to some edge of the property. Just so that it can reconnect without having to.
Well, that's
Figure out
where
how to get to the
manhole
end.
comes
Well, I
in.
think if it was a specific lot that says this needs a sewer to it, and this is the only way to it,
That'd be a
yeah,
different
bring it on
story.
through, but it's sort of nebulous of how,
Yeah.
what it
Yeah,
would do once you
yeah.
got there.
No,
Does it have to, the easement have to go all the way to the north? It can go,
What do we need,
Tuck to the south.
15 feet?
15 feet is the normal, yeah. 15 feet is, and that's what they're showing here. I think it shows 20 and then it drops down to 15, 20 with the two in there. Of course, the design is gonna help feed what the easement ends up being ultimately.
But if you ran it over along the property line, can you ask the neighbors for an easement now, or is that not possible? It'd have to be a negotiated,
It'd have to, yeah, it'd have to be negotiated.
so the whole 15 would be on his property. Which is parking anyway, or
if you have a public utility easement there, that's half or more of potential route.
It doesn't look like it would impact the traffic through there.
Mm-mm.
But we don't know what they're building.
That's right. Well, that's right. We don't know.
We don't know.
Can we kind of
Never
play
saw
the
that.
devil's advocate? What's the downside of us stopping the sewer line at that, not running it across?
You mean the easement and the physical improvement? Well, it's just one less, if let's say it terminated here, and someone had a need. If there was an easement there, it's you know, a potential path of less resistance. You know, it's basically potentially one less hurdle.
I see at the very least we need an easement, but what is the downside of not requiring sewer line to go?
The physical improvement? Just to serve the need, once everything is established, it would be greatly inconvenient to the businesses that are in existence. Versus while it's undeveloped and that disturbance is there, you get the infrastructure in place. But it is, you know, it's a little bit of, you know, rolling the die, and we know there's a need, we know there's not a lot of options for sewer in that area. We know this is an opportunity, and we know that our code makes us look at those opportunities. And so it's really trying to facilitate that future public service with as little disruption as possible. At least that would be the argument if you're leaning towards imposing that as part of the subdivision. But it's weird because it's not a street, you know.
I was gonna say,
There's not a-
when you end it there, it's like a stub street.
There's not a-
They could later be developed.
It's like a stub easement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, no, I would just end it there.
You would end it with no easement?
Well, with the easement part, but he doesn't have to.
What, I would say the easement could be not necessarily as drawn. Could be- If you say there's an easement to point B, point A to point B, they can figure out the best way to do that. This may not be the best way.
Right.
Or just to the,
Well, that
to
isn't
the
their.
outside of the property, whatever
Outside the
that
property
is,
line.
to the property line.
Yeah,
Because that puts the onus on the next guy.
He is the next guy.
I mean, the
he's
commons
property.
guy.
he owns the other.
Commons guy, you know, it's out to commons wherever it goes, right? If you go out, you get out this way, stub it there, or not stub, but the easement, or you get it this way. It still goes to the commons property, wherever it goes.
No, it goes easement on this property, on his property.
You're saying keep an easement all the way around here.
Yeah, but you're still gonna have,
Why do you have to do that?
well,
This
because
is still private.
because when they put it in, that business can still stay operational or whatever.
So if it goes, I'm saying, if it just goes to there,
Stops, yes, right there.
and the easement stops there, why does that go there?
Because you can't get an easement from these people, the other people.
Well, they have to get an easement from these people to connect to it. Anyway.
Is that right?
Yeah, an easement, yeah,
All the way around.
they are
Same people.
they are a legal wall,
It's
yes.
the same people, so
Yeah.
you could go to the closest point of that adjacent property. Why do you go, why have to go all the way up there? It's the same
Let's do it
people,
Well, I
differently.
think we're all pretty much,
right?
don't need to run it any further than he has to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's just topographically, it doesn't make any sense. But it's pretty flat there.
And that's the higher side on the west.
yeah.
And it doesn't encumber as much as of his property with an easement. I don't see any difference in that.
So no easement.
An easement to the edge of the property.
Into the property at the bottom of that lot.
Yeah. This,
parcel one,
up to here.
you just manhole there, and then if anybody wants it, they gotta come in with their own easement through.
Promise, however, yeah, we would have to do that anyway.
Would that be feasible?
Yeah, we'll just have to, the easement shall continue to appropriate location. It's just it's a wordsmithing thing.
So we're not gonna actually take our tape measures out there.
No, I mean, there's
I don't care what it is.
there's some civil design that's gonna go into the utilities, and that design may impact kind of the ideal location of the easement. We'll just have to articulate that, well, we want an easement to continue the infrastructure in the most optimum location as determined by the city
I like that.
engineer.
Doesn't have to be any more than that. It's not our problem.
Okay.
Figure out where it goes.
Okay, so we make 5 and 6 footnotes. I am assuming you agree with the other modifications in the memo, and that was just that number 9 that just says, well, you need site development review and all this stuff to develop the lots. It could be something to review on the commons property.
We just talked about the rest of it was in the middle.
And then 2C, that additional sentence that just references the engineer manual about considering properties beyond in the design. And then allowing the sanitary sewer to be cut short, but have an easement that extends to some degree on that lot. Which is determined in part by the civil design for the actual sewer line. And if the design is to consider expansion, I think that'll help feed that easement. I believe that covers everything.
And then,
Everybody understand that enough to make a motion?
and then 6 becomes a footnote.
5 and 6 both. Yeah, those are just informational footnotes, not conditions.
Right.
Not lost.
Oh, he has that right here.
So, one more question though. So on 4,
He's the one you want.
see the subdivision rules say you must have one access for 100 parking spots or whatever it was.
Oh, uh-huh.
So, you're required to have one. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what this, number 4 says that,
It says another one, are they only required to have one?
Here's what.
well, it requires the frontage road. And the 2 access points creates that frontage road. That subdivision requirement then will enable the development and should cover, should cover most.
What I'm asking is, if they could just have one access point, which is the frontage road. They happen to have, something that property for second access.
Yeah, and
Right, so it's not a requirement that they have a second access.
I don't know if it's really a frontage road anymore, but the thing is,
It's dead end, it's not a frontage road?
yeah, that's a dead end, and then it's a dead end greater than 150 feet long, so now you're taking up a whole lot of space for fire turnaround and stuff like that. I didn't want to get into that too much. Some of my early drafts did have that, but I'm like, well, they're proposing
Okay.
the frontage road anyway, so why really get into that?
Yeah, they're gonna be a problem with it, but I just wanted to make sure the language was.
Where did you see something about parking?
That was in the,
It's in the access section. I was just,
I was looking at the conditions.
Oh.
I thought, I'm going, no, there
By the
isn't,
conditions.
there isn't.
yeah, cause there's how, size of parking lots and that kind of feeds into number of access point and access widths, and I was just kind of considering that.
Did we wanna reword 9 at all?
That's just that. You can live in a subdivision plan. Does this take into account the stormwater detention facility they already have in place?
The conditions do.
I mean, this 9.
It doesn't need to.
So what?
We know it's there, it's clear by the record. We know that the lots still need review to be developed, there's just a little bit of infrastructure that will be captured via easements and maintenance agreement as part of the subdivision.
It's usable, it's not just something they built.
At least according to the preliminary stormwater plan, it's usable, yeah. With some modifications that are some subtle ones that are kind of talked
That's
about.
something that's required of the subdivision rules,
Well,
of stormwater?
we're taking a whole piece of property with one facility on it, and we're chopping it up into 4 pieces. The purposes of a land division is for transfer of ownership. Once you transfer that ownership, now you have common improvement amongst 3 owners.
Yeah.
So for the purposes of the subdivision, we better make sure we have a maintenance agreement.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we're creating a mess.
yeah, good.
I thought I'd get us
Okay, there's.
9, the consensus is everybody likes it?
I'm okay with it.
I don't understand the language of it, but I understand.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by it myself, that's what I was wondering.
And that's, that was
Does it
a
make sense to you?
3:45 PM.
Oh, you're not gonna, okay.
It doesn't have impact on it.
So, approval of the conditions with the change of 5 and 6 being a footnote, 9 being added.
And then the additional sentence to 2C. Per the memo.
It's your revised.
Well, we have to modify 2C basically per the memo, if you find that, yes, we can terminate the utility improvements to that southern boundary, and that sounds like everybody's kind of on board with that.
That's what we're,
Then 2C gets modified to reflect that, to reflect continuing the easement, and then the additional sentence that just reflects section 1824.005, which talks about
we're not getting.
design and consideration future use. And when we talk about future use, we're talking about the life of a city, not the life of a person. A city can live for a long time. This may be an extension that happens 200 years from now. But if it's designed for it, then, you're looking to the future.
I'm all for not putting your blinders on and making sure you don't box yourself in.
So that's,
Everyone wanna add that too? We'll make a motion.
I can't remember, was there a motion or it was just a clarification of all this stuff? I can't
I
remember.
think she was making a
I was
motion.
making
Oh, okay.
motion until you started adding that, but 5 and 6 is a footnote, and 9's being added, and then you started adding
To 2C, the 2C.
Yeah.
That needed to be-
Okay.
that needed to be-
Go for it. I just made a motion.
Okay, I second.
We know what we're doing, you know.
All in favor?
Aye.
What?
I don't know what the motion is.
Well, I understand the motion to
Got
be.
the changes to
the motion-
2C, applicable until you
As
guys.
described in the memo,
As
Yeah.
described in the memo,
We're adding 9,
as described in
condition
the
9,
memo.
yeah, it's in the memo. And 5 and 6 are a footnote, not a condition.
and,
And 2 reflects not extending the
It would.
That's what I.
that's 2C.
Right.
The one thing that we'll have to tweak is, the continuation of the easement less the improvements. And I think that's clear, but it's not clear in the memo, but it's clear from the discussion. So the only condition that really needs to be reworked is 2C.
So we stubbed that.
And that's to terminate the improvements to a lesser extent than requested.
Right.
Continuing an easement to some degree on that parcel. And making sure there's a provision that talks about the ability to serve properties beyond in the future. Which is in the code, it's in the engineering manual already.
That's a concern I've got. Doesn't that mean we have to design it to be able to support development of that in the future? If we just put it over there to service our property, you could use some kind of a lifting, pumping station, but are you requesting that we again dig this down, make sure this design will accommodate growth across the width?
Yes, and a design that'll be worked out between the engineers.
To accommodate development?
To accommodate some future growth to the north.
Well, then we're back to where we were then, right?
And, yeah,
Not completely, no.
Yeah, you're not building it.
Maybe
We're
I'm
not building the sewer line to the north.
It's not, but I mean,
To that point, as if you were.
the sewer that we have to get to is probably the condition, right?
it potentially change the depth,
We would be,
but there's some design stuff that needs to be kind of figured out.
engineering would have to decide that.
Yeah. But, and we know that's a standard already, so that's something the city engineer would consider. We're just making sure it's reflected in the conditions for emphasis.
I guess I'm still, because what you just said is you need to design this so that it will accommodate the growth for property on Pittsburgh Road. And
Potential future
that means we've got to go down 5 or 6 more feet through rock or 5 on some of the other property there. Aren't we in the same boat that I just said we did, we're trying to get out of, or am I misunderstanding?
Well, the problem is these are details that would be worked out between engineers, which is usually a detail, that we were not as deep into at this point. And we're not saying exactly how that manifests, but we're simply reflecting a standard in our code.
Well, if you pump, that's one thing. If you're basically telling us to dig down, that's another thing. That's, I mean.
And we're not saying either. We're saying it needs to, the plan needs to accommodate future growth to the north.
And isn't it true that the engineers, the city engineers are discouraging pumping? Anyway.
Yes, a pump station would be maintenance and it is a perpetual burden to the ratepayers, and is frowned upon.
So what does that do to his project?
Well, the thing is, we're in an awkward situation because the public record is closed. This is informal and, we don't have a lot of attorneys here saying you can't talk now. So a little bit of dialogue.
We already made the decision.
Yes, yeah, so
This is not.
that is correct.
This is just free
This
time.
is dialogue.
So the only choice there is to appeal it to the city council if there's an issue.
That's correct, yeah.
You might want to talk to the city engineers first, so.
Yeah, I guess that.
You could even do pumping, so
Exactly.
might have been a choice for you.
Did we vote on the motion?
No.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah, you did. That's why I asked.
Did.
I said everybody say aye. You all said aye.
Seconded it. We had a
You seconded it.
You heard a second.
Did you hear him all say
No,
aye?
all in favor, yeah.
Huh?
I heard a second.
There was a second, there just wasn't
I
any
didn't
vote.
hear all
Oh, you
in favor.
seconded it.
I said all in favor say aye, but we can say it
I heard
again.
him say that. and
I didn't either.
Aye.
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 Well, this is a little messy one.
Well, we can redo the motion just to make sure
No, we
we're.
can't.
And
That might be a good idea.
you can do that, I believe. You can reconsider.
So it's not messy for the record.
Yes.
I don't think anything's gonna change, but,
Same motion as before, how's that?
Your motion was great.
as I understand the motion that she's made, as we're accepting the conditions as written by staff, adding, number 9, taking out 5 and 6 and putting them into a footnote, and modifying 2C to reflect, access to, future properties, but, because we're not requiring the stubbing of the.
Yeah, at 2C per the memo, and then talk about continuing an easement on the northernmost lot to some degree for future expansion.
No.
Do we have a second?
Russ, there you go.
We did do this again, I second it, okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. No mumbling next time.
Curious, looking at your sewer profile here,
But,
doesn't look like there's a problem.
do we have a motion for, oh, we don't have to, I don't say anything, do we?
You do,
Yeah, there.
you do.
A motion for chairman to sign his
He
funds.
went through his, to the other side.
You have a second?
Second?
All in favor of
Aye.
signing?
Aye.
Okay, thanks. Final written decision of the planning commission may be appealed to the city council. A notice of decision will be mailed to all persons who testified or submitted comment. The appeal deadline will be included in the notice.
So-
Thank you for coming.
Bob, what just happened is they authorized the chairperson to sign the final document. What that does, that means we can whip it up, get him to sign it, and this is common. The other alternative, they could wait till the next meeting, but it just adds time, so usually they just authorize the signature. That means we'll be able to get it out sooner than later, to help move things along.
Thank you for coming in person.
Thanks very much.
This is our first in-person planning commission we ever did.
Yeah, it has been a while.
I like it's nice and casual and it's great.
Sometimes it's more formal. We have an attorney for.
Thank you very much.
See you another time.
Thanks, Al.
Bye-bye.
All right. Took longer than I expected.
Yeah.
But that's all right.
Always does.
We needed to take the time it needed to take. Do we have any discussion on the acceptance agenda of Wilcox and Flagel's wall?
The thermal wall. Yeah, so do you know what that's about?
Yeah, I brought it up when the subdivision was, coming before us. And they go, oh no, we don't need to do any of that.
It's not for the highway though. Didn't you bring up the sound wall?
No.
No, this was the fuel tanks
Oh, you
there. I
did
go,
bring up
what?
the
sound.
Oh, never mind about
Oh,
that.
okay. I know
Yeah.
someone brought up sound.
Yeah,
I remember that.
HUD, because, there's all there's federal monies attached, and you got all this HUD stuff. It's insane the amount of stuff they have to go through, it's just insane. But one of the things is building this thermal wall. And it was really funny, they had to find engineers in Texas. Of course, Texas, it's an oil state, right? So they're used to that, but they had to go that far to find someone who could design it for them.
I know the same group building this is building an apartment complex in Tillamook. The building's all built pretty much. They had landscaping in place, and as they were getting their vouchers or whatever from HUD, stormwater wasn't designed properly.
Couldn't get their vouchers.
And they had to
Safely.
completely redo the whole stormwater after it's built, and it was a big last minute.
They don't deal with stormwater down there, because it floods every year anyway, so it doesn't.
Oh my gosh.
My sister-in-law put on a waiting list. There was 300 people ahead of her. There's no apartments until it's really a good business if you want to get into apartments. There's no apartments at the coast hardly at all.
That's LMC, the contractor.
But Lower Columbia actually stepped in and helped them out.
Yeah.
They were able to keep it out of the wetlands, which was a tricky thing, because it was all backed by wetlands. They had very little place to work. That had, yeah. So what's the PM design group thing?
Popeyes.
That's right. My God, that sounds so familiar. That's Popeyes.
Popeyes. Popeyes
Chicken?
PM.
Popeye's chicken.
Oh.
You get Popeye.
Yeah, PM Design Group, they're the ones who are working on it, but yeah, that's the final lot in the old Violets Villa.
Can we put in for Panda Express or something?
So we,
You want
You
another?
know, like,
You realize what you're gonna have in that row now?
Yeah.
It's gonna look like 185th.
Yeah, well, it's,
Now we just gotta put big businesses behind it.
Oh, really?
Some drive-by shootings we got?
Yeah.
we got Kentucky Chicken now. We need a
Yeah, we
new
get those
place.
imported. You know, just overnight type thing, where we wouldn't have to lodge them.
Yeah.
They'll just come in and do the job.
Yeah, that's how we make our
That's what
money.
I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have,
That's what it was when I.
do you have anything you want to talk about the planning activity report?
I'll let know.
sometimes I read it before so I remember what I, they have to,
Right.
do you have any questions about what I had in there?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
You have to accept, motion to accept the acceptance agenda?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
so,
we do, I forget about that.
got a motion to accept the acceptance report.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Go to your knees.
There's a lot of things going on, development continues, a lot of city projects.
I have two FYI items too.
We're ready for that.
Okay, Christina, could you pull up those photos for me? So I told you last month, that we would be doing CLG Historic Preservation Review this month. I lied. We solicited, gosh, I wrote it down, over 100 property owners, got letters in the mail.
Yeah.
We put it on social media, got no applications. I got 3 interested people that asked me about it. One was for signage, so that's not eligible. One was mostly a paint job, exterior paints, not eligible as a project. And then the other wasn't ready. So there was just no projects.
So last time we had a bunch to look at, and we
Had too many, yeah.
picked one,
Uh-huh.
and all those people,
So one actually did reach out to me, Elliot Michael.
Yeah, I was
and
wondering
he
about
moved
Elliot Michael.
forward- He moved forward on a lot of the stucco work. It's been repaired already.
oh,
Yeah, so, whenever we write these that's perfect, thank you. Whenever we write these CLG grants, we always have a backup project, just in case we don't get applicants. Our UB building, our court and utility building, still needs work. So, you remember, hopefully, the windows, they're installed. But that cornice on top, is very dilapidated. There's wood rot that you can see. Those are the old white transom windows below. We took that photo before. But the wood that connects the metal cornice is completely dry rotted, and the metal cornice that's the third photo. But the metal cornice we think can be taken down and rehabbed. We'll see if that's the case. We need to actually take it down and inspect it more to know. But we're gonna be working with the same historic preservation experts, consultants to do this work, so we're confident that it will be either a, very similar replica, or we will be able to refurbish the existing cornice. So those are our 2 options for that.
It's not a complicated sheet metal project's pretty easy.
Yeah, I think so.
I think white
Maybe
plastic
so.
could replace it just
There you
fine.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
different pipes, so on my building, the top is like sewer pipe cut in half like we talked about, I see that that's kind of a different material.
Oh, different.
Those damn windows.
So the other component of the project, we're getting birds nesting
Heat the lights.
in between the, that's a terracotta, sorry, go back to that, Christina.
Or-
Yeah, so they're actually coming up underneath that terracotta facade and nesting, and so there's like a ton of birds. Utility billing is going out and sweeping nesting material and bird poop all the time. So what we think happened is when we replaced the roof, the flashing that blocked that area wasn't installed correctly. So we want to fix that, clean up those terracotta facade pieces or cornice pieces, whatever you want to call that. So that's the other second component. Hopefully we can just repurpose the terracotta that's up there. If we can clean them up without damaging them, that's our first, plan A. Plan B is if they're not salvageable, we'll try to recreate them and install the flashing correctly so that birds can't get in there.
Was your contractor that did the other stuff in charge of the roof?
Yes, so they have subs for both. Yeah,
What?
they're basically
No, they did do the roof.
They didn't do the roof.
I'm sorry, I thought you meant, no, it's the same, so we're working with the subs that helped us with the windows. So,
I know,
yeah.
but when was the roof done?
Several years ago.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're not
so,
working with them.
I see, okay.
Yeah, they did not install it correctly. They've probably never worked with this type of top before, and so they didn't know how to properly install it with the flashing. That's what Archiform thought. So anyways, that's what we're hoping to do with the money. It's a good project. I think it'll also, this particular part of the project is causing damage. They're actually pooping on the cornice that we're trying to clean up, so the birds are pooping on the cornice, so by doing both together, it'll just maintain the longevity of the building in general. So, that's what we're working on there. Christina, could you pull up the PDF really quick? I have a Riverwalk update as well. So at the August 4th council meeting, council unanimously moved forward with our, the technical advisory committee's recommendation for the full Riverwalk design. So this is in a full presentation form on the project website if you want to go through kind of section by section and look in more detail. I don't really want to do that right now because it's not really pertinent for the planning commission, but I thought you might be interested to know. The short of it is that there's 3 main hubs. So at the south end near the Frogmore Slough where the rail trestle is, we're thinking that is a recreation hub and we want to have paddlecraft users. We want to have a paddlecraft launch at the south end. The water is gentle there as opposed to the Columbia River, which is pretty fast flowing and there's a lot of other motorized traffic. And then if you go halfway through up the site, just south of Tualatin there's what we're calling the Rocky Beach, and that's kind of where you see the C-shape part of the Riverwalk. We think this will be a great area to actually get down and kind of traverse the rocks in kind of near the water. So we're trying to kind of accommodate that type of use there. There will also be an accessible path down. This is also the part of the site where it's pretty mellow grade as it is. And then going further north.
A rocky beach rather than a sandy beach?
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
We don't have the type of condition to support a sandy beach. Our part of the Columbia unfortunately flows very fast and it's,
Send out to sea.
yeah.
It would be
difficult.
dredging it out of the marina, so.
But there's also a little component, we're excited to further design of it, but you see how there's a rock jetty that kind of comes out at the corner there? That might facilitate some debris buildup. And so if we can do that correctly, we might be able to accommodate that type of use. But because this is only coming to 30% design, we're not constructing this. We don't have the funding to do the full Riverwalk. So this is just conceptual at this point. More will be worked out once there's funding. The part we can construct is in the park. So that's the second page, if you can scroll down.
Can I
Yeah, for sure.
the rocky point there. Up above, it's a viewing area that's kind of out a bit. So you're looking down on the people on the beach, and it's kind of a whole little entertainment center there, you know, watching people do things and seeing where you're gonna go.
And I would add at each point throughout this, there's stepped seating, so you can like get close to the water's edge and sit and enjoy and get off of the path. There's areas that you might have an overwater experience, particularly on the south end that I didn't talk about. There might be a cantilevered section. There's an existing sheet pile wall at the south end, so we might be able to build off of that and have a structure that you're actually standing over the water at the south end.
So I know you weren't trying to get into the details.
Yeah.
Email us these slides by chance, would you?
Sure, just these two, yeah.
Oh, that'd be great.
It's pretty fun.
So this is the park, this is phase one, this is what we will bring to construction hopefully next summer. So there's some significant changes to the stage, and we hope that this will help accommodate sound amplification and also provide a back of house. So you'll notice it's not in the existing gazebo location. We've shifted it east and towards the river so that the back of the stage is actually facing the county property.
The part that didn't make sense to me with seating the way it is, so at the current amphitheater seating, you would be sitting at the side of the stage?
So I think there's some more exact orientation to work out, because this is concept, so we'll bring it to 30, 60, 90 and get the right orientation. The idea though is that the seating could accommodate, but also there's a multi-purpose pavilion directly across from it, and then the picnic area above will have direct line of sight to the stage with this orientation too. So we're trying to get kind of the best of all worlds by orienting it that way.
And the lawn berm step seating is seating on the riverside, so.
Yeah, so what Dan's talking about is that dark green kind of irregular shape there. So that is actually a built-up berm, so you can lay on it. You can set your picnic blanket out and have some elevation behind you. In the presentation, there's some great photos of what this could look like. By adding elevation there, we create an area where we can have seating right behind it that faces the marina, the docks, as well. So there's a lot of cool reasons to kind of build up a little hillside there. We're not talking huge, less than 4 feet. We don't want to block views, but just a slight elevation will help kind of enclose the full park and then also provide seating along the public access side.
Sounds like the details need to be worked out. Looks like the stage has moved into the site a little bit more than up against the county property.
Yeah, it's a tricky grade change by the county property, so that's an area we want to look at more. That's actually something council brought up too during our discussion about it, was the connection to parking, the parking lot there, because it's really an extension of the public access along the water. They have a path along the water as well, so really getting that connection right is important.
And if it's farther back, then you can utilize more of the existing amphitheater that won't be behind the stage.
We also want to make a permanent dance floor, so we're going to pave an area. Right now, it's just this kind of temporary structure area.
If anybody saw my grandson dancing, man, he get off the dance floor the whole night.
Yeah. The other benefit of this location is that from the top of the staircase in the amphitheater, you'll be able to see straight down. There won't be this big structure right in the way. So I think it's really going to open up the park by shifting it slightly over. That's the goal.
Just think it needs to be, if you go down there on 13th, there's a large population of older people, including taking my mother down there, and it gets challenging to be able with railings and stuff to get her down to comfortably, like.
One of the considerations to this is that multi-purpose pavilion would also be the ADA accessible seating area, because there is a ramp down to it directly, and it's paved, it's all flat. And so I think as part of programming the space, we would make accessible seating a part of the program of the park. Actually one of the landscape architects has a disabled sister, and she was talking about how she always ends up where the sound equipment is in shows. And that's actually a really great point, is like that's where the soundboard would go too, because it's the perfect distance from the stage. We can have underground utilities between the stage and that pavilion. And then when there's not events, you're right next to the playground, so you can be using it as a picnic shelter for families. So we talked to the stage. The actual access along the water is also exciting in the park. We're planning on getting as close to the river's edge as possible in the park, with having it's not quite cantilevered, but we are extending beyond the bank. So the park footprint will increase by this construction. And there will be some railing that we're going to determine the construction style of. I'm excited to talk about railing forever and ever, because it's important to get the right railing type, and I've seen so many and seen ones that don't work and do work. And lighting will be incorporated. And then going further south, there's some built-in stepped seating. So once you're outside the park, we think that's a good spot to view all of the activities that occur down on the dock. I think the park doesn't adequately address that need. A lot of people walk down to the edge of the park and then there's nothing for them. They just stand at the chain link fence and look down and, okay, I guess I'm gonna walk to where I can sit down. So we wanna build in some seating there. And then right next to that aligns with the Cowlitz Street right-of-way. So right now the Cowlitz Street terminates into the property, and that is a great gateway to the water, and so we're thinking about a special design for that area and how it gets you to what we're calling an overlook. And so that's that last little bulb out feature that you see there. That will also have an overwater experience, we're hoping, just by the method of construction. It will probably involve some retaining walls. You may not actually be physically over the water, but you will feel like you are elevated, and that's kind of the goal of that area. So that's phase one.
That's hard work, that's fantastic, I'm excited.
Yeah, I think it's still early, so there's a lot of details to work out, but I think it's got all the pieces of the puzzle that we were trying to incorporate and that we heard during public feedback. So yeah.
How's it gonna affect the businesses in the plaza during construction? Is it all gonna come from that end and nothing really in here, or?
Businesses in the plaza.
Well, just as far as construction inconvenience kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what you meant, like the routing of construction vehicles, or?
Yeah, just all that, you know.
Yeah, I've already trying to start talking about staff about 13 nights next year and how that's gonna work, and if there's an alternate location, you know, all that is to be determined.
It drives me crazy when you see tourists come in and they wanna take pictures of the courthouse and stuff, and there's county vehicles parked all over.
Oh.
This makes me nuts.
Yeah.
It's like,
So
let's there's a backhoe in front of the courthouse.
Yeah. Well, there's obviously great access through Cowlitz there. We've got a big staging area, so we're not gonna stage on the courthouse plaza, that's for sure. But anyways, I'll be happy to email this to everybody.
So I just mentioned the detail of the stage was chosen that more organic looking
Oh yeah.
Stage that comes up, you know, it's not just a sharp little,
More open and.
Yeah.
really very nice look to it.
Yeah, I would say it's natural lines, more in line, and we talked about using materials like basalt or dark rock.
Back at the
as
stage
part
or
of it,
anything,
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So in the presentation, there's some renderings of what the stage could look like that you'll see. I think also the newspaper did coverage of it and used some photos from the presentation, so,
I saw that.
yeah.
They gave us so many choices, it was hard.
Yeah, Dan's referring to the advisory committee.
Yeah, sorry.
Where we had 3 different options for stage location, stage design, Riverwalk option. I mean, we really exhausted all options in the park, and I think we landed on kind of the best of all worlds.
Various counselors were in the meeting, they gave their input, and that was good.
Yep.
Do you consult with acoustic specialists and stuff for how?
We will as part, we will as part of this, yeah. They have, OTAC has those consultants on board. And I think we'll wanna talk to the people who use the stage currently to see what are your storage needs and, you know, and will this work for you?
One design was the stage completely in the southeast corner, going this way, in the current position, so all those different options.
Yeah, one good thing is the wind usually blows the direction of the sound.
Yeah, wind is tough when you're up there playing, there's music and, but that's playing
You
outside.
don't want to scoop in the wind. The one facing the northeast looked the most problematic.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So what we ended up, as I remember, is we liked the stage, but then we liked the treatment of the overlook on the other plan. So it was lots of mix and matches of elements of various presentations of design.
I think what was the best thing about this plan, as Jenny referred to, that was maximizing the space, choosing a plan that didn't take away from the available space there, so.
Yeah, this adds park.
So one of the things that I have really, really enjoyed is the area where the band has played between them and the people sitting on the seating back. People have danced in there. And it just, not me, I can't dance. I have 7 left feet. But I have seen lots and lots of people have a really good time, and I hope that will not disappear in the.
They do have dance floor on the.
Yeah, no, that's why we wanted to accommodate a paved area. Yeah, cause that
That'd be good.
it's kind of like that puzzle piece material right now, and it's like not even a flat surface right now. It's temporary. So this will be a permanent dance floor.
Yeah, 4 weeks ago, we had 4 generations dancing on that floor at the same time.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
3 to 82, 84.
Kids don't know it's not planned.
And you can imagine too, beyond the dance floor, people setting up for more seating, like in the grassy area. There's no prohibition of setting up your lawn chair or your picnic blanket just in the grass area. So it really, the whole park will become available seating with this design. There will be a lot more areas to sit.
What's the completion estimated on phase 1 then?
So I think we're planning for next summer to start construction. We don't have a construction schedule yet because we don't have our contractor in place, but we're bidding January, February 2022, anticipation of summer, so.
Well, it's interesting, the schedule that was proposed, was included in our work periods and so forth, so we're not impacting the ordinary water, so.
That's why I feel so confident answering that way, yeah.
It's probably gonna be next year rather than going into the next year.
Yep, yeah. There were kind of 2 paths depending on impacts to the river, and I think we're going down an easier path for permitting, and work windows,
Our
so.
work window in the Columbia is November 1 to February 28, so that doesn't suit really well for summer
Yeah.
construction. So you'd have to either a variance to that or have a kind of a 2-parter kind of construction, so
Yeah.
kind of drove a little bit, pushing it out a ways.
Yeah.
But one of the things we talked about quite a bit was, we thought initially, the idea, the big dream was to have this thing going way out over the water, right at the park. And we got to thinking about, what are you seeing when you get out of the water? You see the marina and this boom and so forth. That's not where the great view is necessarily. Maybe farther down the river a little bit, or up the river, is gonna those great views of the mountains. Maybe that's where you want people to go out and look a little bit more.
Yeah, and actually where the overlook is proposed, when you go out there today, that's the first moment where you can get behind or outside of Sand Island and see Mount St. Helens. You can't see Mount St. Helens until you're at the Cowlitz Street right-of-way, until you're at the overlook. So that was
Look at the boom a little bit.
hard, yeah,
But
right.
you look over the boom and see the mountains.
Right, and he's talking about that diagonal
Yeah.
trash boom that collects debris from hitting the docks and flows the water. It's a pretty big feature in the foreground, and so we didn't want to invest in a pier, for example, when you've got this giant structure right there that you're not going to move. So we really did consider a really grand structure, and it just didn't seem like it was gonna be worth our time and energy to permit it and the cost to construct it.
I have always appreciated the simple layout that we've had all these years with people sitting on the
Yeah.
rockery, and certainly the musicians could find a more practical place to do their performances. But it's a great spot altogether.
Yeah, I think the seating is working, that's why we didn't wanna take it out. Yeah.
It's just-
Yeah. But anyways, thanks guys, that's all I have.
Yeah,
Thanks Dan for sharing insight too.
it was fun.
Yeah. And I think you'll still be engaged through the process, it just depends if you want to be.
Yeah, I would be, so. Keep me engaged. All
Cool.
right. Adjourned.
Thanks guys.
It's not so bad, we're past 9.
We'll be able to hit that right here.
I can't just like roll off my computer and go to bed though. Still drive home.
Yeah.